Welcome to this week's Money Talk Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette, and our guests today are Elizabeth Dickinson. She's a public speaker and certified life coach. She's going to help us with how to be the best boss your employees have ever had. Very excited about that. And also, Chris Prefontaine is going to be here in our second hour. He is an expert real estate investor and coach, and he's going to talk to us about how to diversify your business assets. Hello, everybody in the Facey chat. Good afternoon. I apologize for not having any opening music. One of my apps is acting up terribly, and that was so weird to open the show with no opening music. I've never done that before. It was very odd. And my soundboard here is really acting crazy. I'm not totally sure the live audience is completely hearing me, but I'm sure my boss will back at the network will let me know. Will let me know for sure. But anyway, welcome everybody. Alexander Bland, everybody in the Facebook chat. Doug, my unpaid publicist. Thank you for being here. I'm very excited to have everyone here today. Happy Friday to you all. I apologize for my voice sounding a little bit raspy. Your girl has been busy. Hello, Everett Spencer. I've been so busy this week. Yesterday, I had the privilege of doing a quick hit on America's News Voice, if you guys caught it, on the whole blackface controversy. Turns out that when we said we wanted more blacks in government, we had to be a lot more specific. Just kidding. It's a little joke I saw on Facebook. I thought it was funny. Because listen, you have to laugh about these things. It's just kind of hilarious. BZ is in the house, my fellow network broadcaster. Hello, how are you? So I got an opportunity to be on America's News Voice. It's on Comcast and all these other networks. But if you did not catch it, I did post the clip to my social media, so you can catch that clip anywhere. And then my regional newspaper is doing some kind of profile on me for Black History Month. They're doing some kind of profile on the rise in Black conservatives in my area. And they did 2 days, the day before they did a phone interview, and then they came to my house yesterday and did a video interview and took tons of pictures, and hopefully they will paint me in a positive light. But I've been doing a lot of talking the last couple of days, so my voice is is a little worn out. BZ said that is funny. Come on, that is funny. Blacks in the government? That's hilarious. Oh, the name of the paper is called the Atlantic City Press, and the video, I believe, is going to be online. I don't know when it's going to come out, but they did say that the video interview is going to be online. And you know me, all about the self-promotion. When it's up, I will post it. I'll post it when it comes up. But the TV hit I did yesterday for America's News Voice is posted on my social media. You guys can check that out if you like. I did not want to let this opening go without talking at least briefly about AOC's new Green Deal, because listen, it's not, thank you, Alexander. It's fun. Listen, it shouldn't be funny. I shouldn't be laughing, but it's comical. She reminds me of one of my students who, I know, BZ. I know somebody said somebody found out I was Black, apparently. I actually have to tell you the story behind how they found me. It's very funny. I know I'm supposed to be talking about AOC, but I'm at this meeting. There's a historically Black town where I live called Whitesboro, New Jersey, founded by George White, a Republican, by the way. And I was at a meeting talking about they're replacing the post office. Ironically, now this is a historically Black town. This tends to be where the majority of African Americans in my area live. I attended this meeting with the mayor, who is white, who's a Republican, and we just got the majority back. The reason why I was attending this meeting is because someone in Washington, D.C. in the media asked me if I would go cover that meeting. I don't live in Whitesboro. I happen to live in a place called Cape May Courthouse, which is not where a lot of Blacks live. Most of the Blacks in my area live in Whitesboro. I've lived in Cape May Courthouse most of my life. So someone someone saw me sitting next to the mayor and said, "I'll bet she's a Republican." Asked the mayor who I was, and he told the person, the reporter, who I was. Now, in the meantime, an article was published in the paper, in a paper about this meeting, and there's a picture of me from the side and two other people, and the caption of the picture says that the reporter is speaking to residents of Whitesboro, and I'm included in the picture. And of course, as I just explained, I don't live in Whitesboro, and I was sitting right next to the mayor. I happen to live in the same district as the mayor, which is predominantly white. But I thought that was just really funny because they didn't even bother to ask me where I lived. I guess they just assumed if I was Black and I was at that meeting, then obviously I live in Whitesboro. And welcome to the perils of living where I live. Like that, and that has happened. Like that's how it is where I live. Like if you're Black and you live in Cape May County, or you specifically Middle Township where I live, they pretty much just assume that you're from this historically Black town. So, which I'm not. So it's just all of it's just kind of amusing to me. And then I guess they were probably surprised when they came to my house and it was in Cape May Courthouse and not in Whitesboro. So I don't know if they're going to correct that in their paper or what, but I just thought that was funny when I saw that in the paper. I was like, they didn't even ask me where I live. What is that? But anyway, so I do need to talk briefly about AOC's, about what is the woman's name? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal and what she wants to do. It is just a bowl of fantasies. Like how do you write this as a legislator? And listen, democracy, our republic is fantastic, and it's great that basically, I mean, she just proves that like anybody can be an elected official, and that's great. But what is she doing? So this these are the things she wants to do. She wants to ban affordable energy, completely eliminate nuclear energy. Let's just do away with 99% of cars except for the electric ones. Let's gut and rebuild every single building in America. Sounds perfectly practical and reasonable. No reason why we can't do that. Eliminate air travel. I mean, if you want to go to another country, like I have a friend right now who's in Dubai, it's a 12-hour flight. Just build a super train. No big deal. Free education for life. Now, as somebody who is working on her PhD, that might be a policy I can get on board. I'm kidding. Is that nice? The dumbest woman in America? That's a bit of a stretch. It's not nice, Al Parsons. Listen, she's a dreamer, and there's a space for that. I'm not sure it's Congress, but there's a place for that. And free money. Here's the thing and she wants to ban meat, and that is definitely where I get off the train because I like a good porterhouse. But listen, you need to have, and she wants to do all this, the world's going to end in 12 years, according to her, if we don't handle this situation. And it's nice to have goals, but you have to have a pragmatic way to reach these goals. You love AOC, do you? Because she's hilarious and just provides comedy, but she's very dangerous because, in our schools, we've been teaching kids socialism and entitlement for years. And, people who think like her could be in control, and we could end up, I don't know, Venezuela or something. I'm going to take a brief break, which I am naturally late for because I was running my mouth. And we'll be back in a moment or two with Elizabeth Dickinson to talk to us about how you can be the best boss your employers ever had. I have a brand new Ron Edwards notebook coming your way right now.
A great American history maker finally gets the recognition she deserves. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, Dr. Gladys West, one of the 4 hidden figures featured in the movie Hidden Figures, recently was given formal recognition for her inventive genius behind the development of the global positioning systems The 87-year-old genius mathematician, one of 4 Black American women portrayed in the Hidden Figures movie, joined an elite group of professionals recently recognized by the Air Force Space Command. She was also publicly honored for her tremendous work as a member of a team of all Black professionals who did computing for the United States military before electronic systems were available. West and her Black American colleagues excelled to the heights of intellectual achievement. They did not allow Jim Crow Democrat bigots to deter them from reaching their God-given potential of greatness. Congratulations, Dr. Gladys West, and all the one-time Hidden Figures who chose the high road of greatness over the low trail of bitterness often exhibited by many individuals today who only have themselves to blame for their self-induced lack of achievement. I'm Ron Edwards. Join me Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on SHR Media, AmericaMatters.us, and 12 a.m. Sundays on Talk America Radio Network.
Ron Edwards, the new voice of America.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
Right now, you can get the credit you deserve. Just visit MrCreditRepair.biz. Let their expert credit repair specialist remove late payments, charge-offs, collections, even old bankruptcies fast and easy. That's MrCreditRepair.biz. Why go anyplace else? Increase your credit score today. At Mr. Credit, you always get a quality service, all at our everyday discounted price. Stop getting turned down for cars, credit cards, or even new homes. Visit MrCreditRepair.biz today. That's MrCreditRepair.biz. Your credit repair is our #1 priority.
Making a living can be tough these days with so many jobs going overseas. If you love numbers and puzzles and want job security, you can become a tax specialist with an amazing 6-month tax course from Tax Mama. Operate your own tax practice locally or anywhere in the world where there are American taxpayers. It's a great way to write off your trips to visit family for months at a time. Everything you need to pass the IRS 3 special enrollment examinations is included in this course. Visit irsexams.school, and if you need more than 6 months, that's okay. Take your time. You're in the course until you pass the exams or until you unsubscribe and reject Tax Mama's emails.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette, and I'd like to introduce my guest for the first hour, Elizabeth Dickinson. She's a life coach, speaker, and presenter, also a writer. She has coached and presented in over 40 for-profit and nonprofit organizations, including Land O'Lakes and Performance Excellence Network. The Concise Speak Coaching Handbook is her first nonfiction book. Education includes a Bachelor's of Education, honors degree, Cambridge University, a Master's in Psychology, and Lesley University, and life coaching certification from Adler Graduate School. As a former board member of the Minnesota Chamber of International Coach Federation, she initiated the PRISM Award, recognizing organizational coaching excellence at Bar Engineering, Cargill, Pepsi, and nonprofits, including Better Futures Minnesota and Pregnancy Choices. Elizabeth was named the change maker by Minnesota's Women's Press after she first ran for political office. And without further ado, Elizabeth Dickinson, how are you?
I am fine. Thank you so much for having me on your show, Melanie.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. Listen, is there anything that I left out of your bio that you'd like my audience to know?
No, I don't think so. I think part of my mission is to really help people adopt coaching skills, and especially for your listeners, into their management techniques so that they have happier, more engaged, more productive employees.
It seems like that's very difficult to do these days, isn't it? People seem very distracted, and I think people stay in jobs that they're not very happy with, and a lot of times it's because of their bosses that they have this situation. I know I've had that situation. I don't know anyone who hasn't had a situation where they felt that they had a boss that they just couldn't deal with.
Absolutely. You just really hit the nail on the head right there. The Gallup organization measures employee engagement every 10 years. And they have decided that engagement, which is basically when the employee goes above and beyond their job duties to do more, that engagement is actually linked to a whole host of factors for the company, including customer ratings, profitability, productivity, turnover, even things like safety and shrinkage or theft. So the Gallup research has identified three things that ensure good management and employee engagement. And one is hiring good managers, weeding out bad managers, and customizing management to each employee. What they figure is that most employees today, they really, it's wonderful to get good benefits and all of that kind of thing. But basically, the most important thing for them is to have meaning and to have some autonomy. And one of the ways that you can sort of increase an employee's autonomy is really to coach them in a way that brings out their strengths and that increases their sense that they can decide what they want to do on the job. And that takes a little bit of a leap of faith, because the essence of coaching is really it's sort of based on this idea that people know how to do their jobs, and the best way for them to do their jobs is the way that the way they think they should do their jobs. And that really, that definitely takes a little bit of faith. But if you can do it, you really honor the diversity of goals. You can accommodate different growth patterns. You can allow for different approaches to doing the job. So those are all parts of it. And the rewards are, the companies that have won the PRISM Award or that use coaching, they definitely get happier employees. Some of them are some of the most profitable companies, on the planet. They have higher customer ratings. And, they have less turnover. All of those things are part of engagement. And all of those things can be increased through helping your managers learn coaching skills.
Okay, now you are bringing about some really interesting points, because I would think that there are areas where I would think that part of the gift or part of the talent that you need to develop as a boss is to find those places where that actually applies. Because I would think that if you, for example, like I have a friend who's an engineer, a chemical engineer specifically, there's areas at of her job, I would think, where she has to be pretty precise and cannot do things her way or stuff starts to blow up. But there are
absolutely.
But there are
areas. No, it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. But there are things that you can incorporate in there that things like incorporating SMART goals. SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, results oriented, and time bound. That's what the acronym SMART means. And you can help your employees figure out that everything that they're doing about making it more efficient. But if you also tie that to the kind of the soft skills, which are, refraining from being judgmental about people, being encouraging, using active listening techniques, all of those things that a coach does, you can make the harder things, like coming up with SMART goals, you can make them go over a whole lot easier. Employees really want to feel like they're listened to, and listening doesn't just mean, just sort of listening with half an ear. It means putting your whole focus on the employee and using repetition, repeating back what they're saying. It doesn't, one of the things I always say, and I say this to everybody, whether you're, a parent or a manager or anything else, but when people start to feel desperate, and kind of get out of control, and you can even use this technique in arguments, if you just say, wait a minute, I want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, and then you repeat back what they've said, it literally relaxes the person, because hearing their own words back to them proves that you have been listening. It doesn't mean you have to agree with what you're repeating back to the person, but it does. But it is just, it's the closest I can get to a silver bullet in all relationships. I even use it with my husband. Sometimes repeat back what he says if I see him getting upset. So knowing some of those sort of basic skills, and all of the skills I think in coaching are incredibly simple. They're not always easy to do because you really have to bring your ego out of it. but they are very simple, and anybody can learn them and use them in all kinds of relationships.
For sure. And I'm thinking in terms of, I'm a classroom teacher, I'm a classroom professor. I think those kinds of things probably work in those situations. And you're right, it's not easy, especially when you are an authority figure. Do you think, does holding people accountable play a role in coaching? And is it the how you hold people accountable that matters?
Yeah, I think all of that matters. I mean, if I'm working with somebody one-on-one, we've gotten to the point where we've actually identified action steps. I always say to them, is this something you want to commit to? And they can say yes, they can say no, or they can counter with something else. But the idea is that, you get people to commit to something. And they can absolutely say no, but then I say, okay, we have to find something else that you can commit to. And then you come up with deadlines. And the deadlines really come from the other person. When do you think when do you think you're able to get that done by? And they can tell you. And then you can say, because if it's something super simple that you're pretty sure anybody could get done in 24 hours, like making a phone call or doing some follow-up like that, I get their permission. You kind of use the neuroscience, which is, if you ask people a question, and a question that they want to answer, it basically gets the learning and behavioral change centers of the brain going. I mean, there's been some great neuroscience out there that they put, sort of electrodes on the brains of people being coached. And if the coach basically has a judgmental attitude, doesn't believe the person can do it, and they tell the person what to do, the learning and behavioral change centers of the brain don't light up. They're not engaged. But if you have this sort of, if you have this attitude that the person really can do it, you ask them compelling questions, you can hold them accountable to what they say, and they're more likely to follow through on something if they come up with the idea themselves. I always say in coaching, I have lots of good ideas, but I want to see if I can get them out of you first, get your own ideas about it, because you might come up with an equally good idea, or you'll come up with my idea, but it's always going to engage you more if you come up with it yourself. But you can still hold the person accountable. You can say, are you willing to commit to this? Yes, no, or I want to amend it. And then you have a deadline. You say to them, when do you want to have that done by? And then, and then you ask them, how will I know you've done that? And they can say, you set it up. That's not meant to be, confrontive in a nasty way. It's like, do you want to tell me by email? Do you want to leave me a phone message? Do you want to tell me the next time we meet? So you get things really nailed down, but you're also using the neuroscience and drawing the answers out of the other person. And it's just so much more effective. I found that sometimes I'll give suggestions to people without asking permission. And I'll say, I've got what about such and such or such and such? And they'll look at you and go, oh, that's a great idea. But half the time they won't follow through on it. So I've learned that the coaching technique really works, that it's better to get it out of them. And, if they're really stumped, then I'll say, would you like a suggestion? And then, 99% of the time they'll go yes. And then I'll give them the suggestion. But again, you've engaged their brain because you've gotten the permission to give them the suggestion. And what I find is that people will follow through on all of it, if they've got those kinds of parameters, if the goals are SMART, which you can use in any situation, right. Specific, measurable, achievable, all of those things. And the person still feels like they've got autonomy, that they are creating their own lives. It's not being dictated to them. And that's the essence of having an engaged employee.
Indeed. I have a couple of questions in the Facey chat. I've been copying them down. One question out of the Facey chat from Kenneth McClinton, actually the inventor of Money Talk with Melanie. Believe it. Awesome. He invented the show from the Exceptional Conservative Network. He's a boss himself, and he said, what's the difference in results when expectations are written and not oral? I guess what he's saying is do you get a different result?
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great question. There's some studies out there that show if goals are written down, you're 30% more likely to achieve them. I mean, that's really stunning. So almost everybody that comes through that I've coached, they take notes. They write stuff in their calendar, they write stuff down, and that is really an awesome way to make sure that, it just gives that extra added boost and makes it more likely that the goal is actually going to be achieved. So that's a brilliant question.
Oh wow! Please don't blow his head up anymore. We don't need that. When I saw him pop up in the Facey chat, I told him he was just on time. We're talking about how to be a good boss. No, that's true. I had another question in the Facebook chat. Keith Little, another great consistent fan of the show, wanted to know, he works in technology, and he wanted to know how this worked in technology, and specifically because, in technology, there can be a lot of areas where you don't know exactly what the problem is in technology, so you can't really set a goal, if that makes any sense.
I understand. For problem solving, if you're working with, it depends on if you're working on your own or if you're working with somebody else. But if you're working with somebody else who's working on the problem, I mean, the best thing to do is just going to be to say, well, what do we know so far about this? About this problem, if something is not working that you thought was going to work, what do we know so far? What have we tried so far? And then what don't we know? Because we don't always know what we don't know, but let's at least put down what we don't know about it. So basically just getting all of that stuff out in the open, maybe down on paper. Sometimes you can't, and then the other thing that you can do is just give it some time. So, as long as it's not something you have to act on right away. We know that the brain continues to work on things when you go to sleep at night. So you can kind of program yourself before you go to sleep at night and sort of think about the problem, and then just kind of put it out there that you're open to surprising solutions, and just kind of open it up to your subconscious, and see if you get any more ideas the next day, about how to deal with it. Does that make sense?
It does. And there's a second part to that question, but we're up against a break. And it's a technology question. And I deal with this as well. And so I teach technology, and I find myself surrounded by people who are not familiar with what I teach. And the question that Keith has, I'm going to tell you what the question is, and I happen to know Keith, so I know some of what he is involved in. And his what he said is that when leaders demand answers to timelines for things they don't understand regarding the deadline, or asking for a deadline being improper, then it sets up the deadline for failure, which is absolutely true. I'm going to take a break. I want you to contemplate that over the break, because that happens to me too. It actually happened to me in a meeting today. I was trying to explain something that happened in my classroom, and it takes longer because what I do has to do with technology, but it's the same situation that I deal with all the time. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. My guest this hour is Elizabeth Dickinson. She's a public speaker and certified life coach. She's talking to us about how we can coach ourselves into being the best boss your employees have ever had. We're going to take a brief break. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Right now, you can get the credit you deserve. Just visit MrCreditRepair.biz. Let your expert credit repair specialist remove late payments, charge-offs, collections, even old bankruptcies fast and easy. That's MrCreditRepair.biz. Why go anyplace else? Increase your credit score today. At Mr. Credit, you always get a quality service, all at our everyday discounted price. Stop getting turned down for cars, credit cards, or even new homes. Visit MrCreditRepair.biz today. That's MrCreditRepair.biz. Your credit repair is our #1 priority.
Making a living can be tough these days with so many jobs going overseas. If you love numbers and puzzles and want job security, you can become a tax specialist with an amazing 6-month tax course from Tax Mama. Operate your own tax practice locally or anywhere in the world where there are American taxpayers. It's a great way to write off your trips to visit family for months at a time. Everything you need to pass the IRS 3 special enrollment examinations is included in this course. Visit irsexams.school, and if you need more than 6 months, that's okay. Take your time. You're in the course until you pass the exams or until you unsubscribe and reject Tax Mama's emails.
We're back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette, and my guest this hour is Elizabeth Dickinson. She is talking to us about how you can be the best boss your employees have ever had. Very interesting conversation that we're having today. Before the break, I was talking to you, Keith Little mentioned that sometimes it's really difficult because when people don't understand the technology that you're dealing with, so it's difficult to deal with the deadlines or stick by the deadlines because the people who are setting the deadlines don't really understand. They don't understand what they're asking for. It was the essence of what he was saying. They don't.
Yep. Yeah, Keith's question is a great one. And I actually coached somebody kind of around this issue at Land O'Lakes. The guy was a manager, and there were guys and gals, I guess, who would just sort of blow in there, and he was a little intimidated by them because they all had PhDs, but they didn't understand his job, and they'd walk in there and they'd ask, for such and such to happen, and he would blow up at them, and he was in danger of losing his job because of blowing up at them. And we had to coach around, the way we coached around that was, what I realized is that he felt he had to give them an answer right away. And so what he found worked for him was to say, I don't have an answer for you right now, but if you can give me some time, I can solve that problem for you. And that just sort of basically defused the situation so that he didn't lose it. And I understand what Keith is saying, that sometimes people come in and they don't understand the job. They don't understand the technology. They don't understand all the things that could go wrong, and all they want is a result, and they want a result by yesterday. And I think the best thing to do would be to start by using some active listening skills back to them and just kind of, first of all, make sure that they know that you've heard them, because that'll defuse it. So I hear you asking for X, Y, or Z, and I hear that you really want it by tomorrow at noon. And I understand that this is really, really frustrating for you. Are you willing to consider another alternative? And get their buy-in. Get their buy-in, because they're probably not going to say no. And get their buy-in, and then say, look, what you're asking for has so many variables. And I know this is, and it's really, really complicated. What I can do by noon tomorrow is give you an update on what you want done, but I have to tell you that it's totally possible it's going to take longer than that. But I'm totally willing to keep in touch with you and to let you know progress as things go along. Is that okay with you?
I like that.
So,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So basically, show them that you're listening, especially if you're hearing frustration from them, and then just sort of give them, get their brain buy-in by asking a question they can probably say yes to, and then kind of renegotiate it. And renegotiate it in a way that shows concern for them. I'm going to give you status updates on what's going on, because that makes them part of the process. That makes them know that, you really care about this and that you're working on it. So, it's all, yeah.
Keith said yes.
Sorry, that would be my best take on it.
Oh, I like that. Keith said yes. They will say no. Oh, Keith said, I'm laughing at that.
Because if they will say no?
Yeah.
Well, that's, and that's a real tough one. I mean, I'd have to probably get in the room with Keith and kind of, coach him through it to sort of, to figure out all of it. But, I think then you just have to kind of say to them, I understand that you don't want to do this, or, that you're asking for something and you absolutely want it done by then. I would so love to say yes to this, but I don't want to set up unrealistic expectations. So and at some point you just have to bail if they don't get it after you've gone through all of that. You just have to bail on the conversation if it's getting out of hand and say, can we discuss this again later?
I tend to do that too with the technology piece. And it's hard because, especially when you know the details of the technology, it can be very difficult. It can be very difficult. The point that I tend to get to is I say something like, I could regale you with the minutia of the technical details, but trust me when I say this is the time frame. If you want to know all the technical details behind it, I'm happy to explain it. But if you trust my expertise, this is what it is. And that's kind of, where I go with that. I can look, I'm a teacher by trade, so I can explain it. But most of the time people don't want to listen to that. I deal with that with my parents a lot in explaining. Today I had to explain to a parent why a test was a 0, because I happen to teach, well, here's the thing. I happen to teach technology. I happen to teach a computer class. So the test was a project. And she's like, I don't understand how you get a 0 on a test. How did she not do her test? You're sitting in a classroom, you just take the test. And I'm like, well, not in a computer class, because it's technology. Yeah. I don't ask her a bunch of questions about PowerPoint. It's a project. I said, and she just didn't do the project, and it was a test grade. So because it's technology, I need to know that she knows how to use the technology. It's a different, so, you have to explain, the difference between a technology type test. I said, I could ask her a whole bunch of questions about PowerPoint, but is that really useful in knowing that she knows how to use the program, which is what I'm here to teach her? No.
Well, and it sounds pretty simple, because if she didn't do the project, then she didn't do the project. So, yeah.
Well, right.
Yeah.
Well, people don't gather that aspect at first, how technology is just really different from the regular world. And that, that was her first, this is the only computer class. And, the parent was like, well, how in the world, she had 3 days, why in the world does she have 3 days to take a test, first of all? And and why were you not watching her closely to make sure she was taking it? It's high school. I was like, because it's high school. It's self-guided. She either does the work or she does not do the work. I can't sit by her and make sure she goes through every slide and does what she's supposed to do. It's a, so, those are the types of things, where when you're in a supervisory authority type capacity, I have to coach parents through that kind of thing all the time, because they,
absolutely. Because, because people make judgments without really understanding everything that goes into it. And they can't know everything that goes into it, but they have to know some basic parameters so that they know the judgment they're coming to is actually the correct one.
For sure. And it's a very unique situation when you add the technology piece. And unfortunately or fortunately, technology is everywhere. Kenneth McClinton says, how does the one handle false expectations upon an employer? False expectations upon an employer? What kind of question is that?
Does he mean boss expectations on an employee?
No, he means an employer. He used to be my boss. I told you, he invented my show. I know what he means. That's why I'm giving him a hard time. Actually, we'll be working together in a couple of weeks at a conference. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, but I'm going to need Kenneth McClinton to elaborate on that thought. So I guess what he's saying is sometimes employees have expectations, too many expectations of their boss. Like they think their boss is Superman and can do everything, or perhaps they think that their boss is responsible for things that they're not responsible for. Or maybe he's indicating, if he elaborates, I'll know, but I'm just kind of guessing here, that he has to do maybe more hand holding than he thinks he should have to do. Oh, and he said exactly. Well, I told you.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, I think that I mean that's a tough one. I think I think you need to, as the boss, you probably need to do some questions about what the folks' expectations are. Because an awful lot of times, if employees are acting too needy, or what you think of as too needy, it's probably because they're afraid of making a mistake, and they want to make sure that what they're doing is in line with the boss's expectations. That's something that I find a lot. I work with some nonprofits, and some of the younger people that work in the organization, how can I put it? They have a lot more questions. Like, they just have a lot more questions before they take action. And my whole attitude is, they'll say, well, what do you think about such and such, or what this person, or how should I approach them? And I'm like, you approach the person by asking them. You can just call them up. And they're like, oh, that's a cold call. And I'm saying, no, not if they've already done the outreach. And, you can always call them and say, hey, so-and-so met you at a gathering, and they suggested that I contact you to ask you about this stuff. I mean, sometimes it seems really basic to me, but I have to realize that a lot of people out there are afraid of making mistakes. They're afraid of being pests. They're afraid of all of these things. So, I think in the boss's case, you need to say, you need to identify the behavior. It's like, Bob, you keep coming up to me and asking me about, certain things. And to me, it seems a little bit obvious. Can we talk a little bit about stuff? Because I see you as a bright, capable person. I've seen you do all of this other kinds of work where you've done outreach, but in this area, you keep wanting to check in with me. What can I do so that you feel more confident, or able to do this without checking in with me so much? So somehow just identify what you see as the behavior that's kind of irritating you. And then put it back on them. How can you be more empowered in this area to go forward? You just kind of need to get to the bottom of it. Identify the behavior and get to the bottom of why it's happening, and then put it on them. How can you act how could you be more empowered in this area?
It's true, and so, some people just are not independent. Grab the bull by the horn kind of people. And I do think you're right. People are afraid of making mistakes. And then, but I do think that Ken may have and Ken is certainly not saying this. These are my words, just in case anybody on his network are listening. But I think sometimes people are just lazy too, and don't want to think about things. And so instead of thinking things through themselves, they'll just ask their boss. You know what I mean? Instead of working problems out themselves.
That could definitely be part of it. But I would say, as a coach, before if you're trying to take a coach approach in this stuff, coaches try and avoid making judgments about people that are related to like basic character traits. It's more about treating what's going on. There's a behavior going on here that is just not productive. It's not productive, and it's not what you're expecting or hoping for from the person. But rather than, saying they're just lazy, it's really about, again, identifying the behavior and say, look, I noticed that whenever you have a question about stuff, you come to me and ask me. I'm not always here, and I can't always respond because there's other things that I need to be doing. What can we do? What could you do to get your questions answered in some other way besides coming to me? Some way that is not, a judgment about their character so much, but really gets to the heart of the behavior, and then puts it back on them to come up with a solution, if that makes sense.
It does.
Because that's going to use the neuroscience.
It does make sense. I know a lot of times what I'll do if I have a problem is I usually try to come up with a couple of solutions myself, and if I'm not sure like what the proper one is, I'll email my boss and say, here's the problem, here are a couple of solutions I've come up with, what do you think? So that at least,
oh, well, that's great. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You've done some of the work. It's not like you haven't put the time into thinking it out, but you're just not sure yourself what the best way to go is, and you're bringing them in as a collaborator. Yeah, that's a totally different way into it, and that totally works as long as you've got a boss who's going to play with you on that.
Ken says meshing multiple personalities in a framework. Ken runs a radio network with multiple egos and personalities. Oh, yeah. Mine was one of them. Meshing multiple personalities in the framework of an efficient and effective labor initiative. Melanie, you were and are a star, and none of the questions were about you. Oh, I didn't think the questions were about me. Oh, sweet. How do you deal with bosses or supervisors who think they gotta be right? This is from Levon Wilson, a fan of the show. A fan of the show. Well, if it's you, Levon, they probably are right. I'm just saying.
Oh.
This is how I treat my faithful listeners.
Well, that's really hard because there's a power differential there, and especially if you've got somebody who wants to maintain that, that power authority. I think, it depends on how empowered you as an employee want to be, because I think one of the things that you can do is, without judgment, just say to the boss, and again, this is something where what I would recommend is that you ask to talk to the boss, not about product, but about process and the way things are handled. And sometimes it might be good to have someone else present when you do that, if it's to that point. But if you still have a good enough relationship with the boss to say, can we talk about, how things are handled around here, that's separate from any other supervising time that we've got, and just kind of sit down with them and say, I wanted to make you aware of something, when you do X, like when you, ask a lot of questions of me, after you've told me that I've done a good job, but then you ask a lot of questions that sort of, asking all those questions in the way you do makes me feel X, Y, and Z. So it's like, when you do X, this is how it affects me. And you share that with the boss. They then have a choice. They can either get real defensive about it, or they can say, okay, I see. So when I do that, you feel disempowered. And you can potentially come to a place where, they have a choice about if they're going to change the way that they are behaving. But that's a really tricky one. I mean, that definitely is a really tricky one. I think it depends on how empowered the employee and what kind of risks they want to take.
For sure, and Levon is in the Army, so I'm not sure how empowered Levon.
Yeah, in the Army, I think it's really tricky because you're talking about. I mean, honestly, that is tricky because you're talking about a hierarchical, situation where, and if the whole system is set up so that one person gets to tell people beneath them what to do, then, I think you just have to kind of grin and bear it.
You're kind of stuck.
That's a really different kind of situation. That's not just a boss, that's the military. And the military is based on a totally different system. I mean, the stuff that I'm advocating for is stuff that works when you've got, when you've got bosses that are willing to give some flexibility, that have seen that productivity improves when these types of techniques are used interpersonally. But if you're going into a system where it's really, built on a hierarchy, I think it's a lot harder. You can change it when you're the boss, but
Right.
not necessarily if you're a recruit in the Army.
Right. I tell my students that. I'm like, hey, when you're the teacher, then you can then you can decide how the classroom runs. But until then, guess what?
Right.
No, but
Right.
listen,
Right.
we're at the close of the hour. I really appreciate you being on the show. Can you tell people where they can get the title of your book, where they can get it, and how they can follow you on any social media that you have?
Absolutely. Well, the Concise Coaching Handbook, How to Coach Yourself and Others to Get Business Results, is available at Business Expert Press. It's also available on Amazon. And if folks want to subscribe to my blog, you can go to pursueyourpath.com. The name of my business is called Pursue Your Path. And I'd be happy to add them to my blog if they want to have a complimentary coaching session to see if coaching might be something they want to explore. Contact me through my website, and I'd be happy to set that up. And if they work for a company that would like to bring me in to talk about coaching skills and how to use them with their management, I am also open to that.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being on the show. Elizabeth Dickinson, everyone, thank you so much for being on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Excellent. You are listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette. Coming up next is Chris Prefontaine. He is a real estate expert, a real estate investor and coach. He's going to talk to us about how to diversify your business assets. I'm looking forward to talking to him about this, and I'm wondering what he thinks about changing AOC's plan to change all the buildings into energy efficient ones. I just really am, because I think that's hilarious. I'm going to ask him about that because why not? We're going to take a brief break while I get in touch with my next guest. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. We will be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the HR Media Network.
Hey, this is Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for the Right Way with Shannon Wright, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics,
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
and all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events? All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey girls, Carry Girl Gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys' club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic concealed carry and 2A girls. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
New show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's no surrender, ever. Because truth is not always pleasant.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette, and welcome to our second hour of the show. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on this Friday evening. Our first guest, Elizabeth Dickinson, was very helpful in telling us how we could be better bosses, and if we have bosses that are not so awesome, how we could deal with them. I thought she did a great job doing that. Our guest for the second hour is Mr. Chris Prefontaine. Hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I'm sure he will correct me if I am wrong. He is an expert real estate investor and coach. He's going to talk to us today about how to diversify your business assets. He has been in the trenches in the real estate industry for over 25 years. His company's done over $80 million in real estate transactions. He's a practitioner at heart, which is why his company still buys between 4 to 10 properties each month, where Chris and his family practices what he preaches. He's the author of the best-selling book, Real Estate on Your Terms. He's an expert at addressing the fundamental problem most business owners struggle with, which is how to get their wealth out of their business and into other assets in case they don't have the opportunity to sell their business or if they want to sell their business. So diversification of assets can provide a balanced portfolio, and real estate may be one of those investment strategies that they may want to consider. So Chris Prefontaine is on the show today to tell us all about how they can do that, and I'm very excited to introduce him today. Chris, how are you this evening?
Terrific. Thank you. And the name was pronounced perfectly.
Ah, excellent. I love when I get that right.
Good deal.
Oh, so happy to have you on the show this evening. I was talking in the opening at the first hour about the new Green Deal proposal, and part of, I don't know if you've heard about this in Congress, one of the young new Congress women has proposed this new Green Deal, and one of the proposals is that every building is replaced with green energy, green efficiency, like that every building is redone. And I comically said I was going to ask you about that. That's not a serious question unless you really do have an opinion on that.
I haven't found any benefit ever to commenting on political issues, but I did hear that. I think it's rather a joke.
For sure. Well, for sure. But I thought it was so. I was like, how is that even practical? Well, listen, it's good to have goals. Being young is all about dreaming.
All the power to her.
Yes, I teach financial literacy to high schoolers, and one of the things I hear lots of very interesting dreams. A lot of my students are going to be in the NBA and thus don't need to be financially literate, of course, or they're going to be rappers. So neither of those vocations you need to learn to manage money. So they don't need my help at all. Or yours, for that matter, because why would they need like investing help or anything like that? Because they're not going to have any money or anything if they're going to be in the NBA or athletes or rappers. It's insane. It's insane. Well, I'm happy to have you on the show today. I really want to talk to you. I liked the aspect of reinvesting your business assets. Like once you have this successful business, and I know plenty of people, believe it or not, in this situation. I happen to live in a resort area, and people who live where I live tend to be entrepreneurs or work for the government. So you have a lot of that. And once you get to a certain age, and I'm a woman of a certain age, that you start staring down the barrel of retirement and start thinking, okay, am I going to run this business for the rest of my life, or what am I going to start to think about doing? So I'm sure there's plenty of my listeners who are starting to think about that too. So I liked the idea of considering real estate investing as one of those things that you might do to diversify your assets. And why do you think that the real estate is a good way to go in that regard?
Well, I mean, I have two comments on that. One is real estate's not going anywhere, right? So it just depends on their time horizons. But the other comment I'd have is relative to quote unquote investing. The way we teach to buy, you don't have to put up cash. You don't have to sign on bank loans. And that's a big deal. So if they did put aside a nest egg, they can save that nice and safe on the side and do real estate. And then on the occasional deal where you can put some cash in to get a bigger win or an easier buy or a better buy, sure, use some cash, but it's not required. All our students around the country don't use their cash and don't use their credit. Really?
So is this what you mean when you say buying a home on your own terms? How would you go about doing that?
Yeah, exactly. You said it. So there's a couple different ways. One is buying with owner financing, and another one is buying on a lease purchase. And neither one of those, if you negotiate properly, neither one of those are going to require money down. But let me clarify owner financing, because owner financing can mean a whole bunch of things, and they're all good. But when we say owner financing, we are referring, Melanie, to a property that is free and clear. In other words, the seller has no debt on it, and that's about a third of the homes in the United States. And they are willing to accept payments over time, and they're principal-only payments, not interest. So you're really beating down agreed upon balloon date, obviously, to finish the payments. But that's a great way to buy because you have a nice hedge against the economy in case the market goes backwards on you, and you're getting that principal benefit every single month.
Very true. I have a question in the Facey chat. The show streams live on Facebook, just me, but the audience can hear you quite clearly. And I already have a question in the Facebook chat from Ken McClinton. Wants to know why you suggest real estate when the stock market gets annual returns of 10% or greater, especially in place of a 10-year bull market. I have my own opinion on that, but you go first.
Okay, I tend to be blunt, so I don't want to step on anyone's toes on this, but I would never opt for a 10% return when I can get multiples of that in real estate. That's number one. Number two, my home value, as bad as the market crash was in 2008, cannot go to zero, but a stock can go to zero. Very true.
And I tend to agree with that. And the other thing about real estate is you have residual income, you have tax breaks. There's so many ways you can maneuver with real estate that you can't with the stock market.
Absolutely.
You can your real estate investments can be covered under a business and therefore provide you more tax write-offs and provide you more, to put it diplomatically, flexibility in your accounting. So
here's the other thing, Melanie. Think about this for a minute. We don't put much money down. I mean, I put $10 to $100 down, or if I'm in my IRA investing, I'm putting $500 down. But let's just think about if an investor was going to put $100,000 in the stock market, forgetting what you and I already said, and instead took that and took $1,000 per home and tied up 100 homes, 100. When the market goes up by even a few percent, you do the math. There's no comparison. We could go on that one.
Exactly. And the bottom line is, one thing happens in the stock market, 1 or 2 bad days, or one big tragedy, a 9/11, something like that, and you're suffering a great big loss. I mean, over 10 years is fine if you are the kind of investor who can withstand the severe dips and lows, but most of us can't.
Yeah.
The Warren Buffetts of the world, that's an opportunity to buy when the stock market does something like that long term. But most of us don't have those same opportunities. So,
I agree.
It's a risky premise. Ron Edwards says he likes flexibility. There's a conversation going on in the Facey chat because Ron Edwards in the Facebook chat said, why don't any of my students try to become rocket scientists? And I said, because they don't make any money. But obviously they don't. But I like the idea of buying on your own terms. And I never thought of, I didn't realize 1/3 of people's homes are, now is that 1/3 of the homes on the market, or 1/3 of homes in general in the United States are owned outright?
Yeah, in general, owned without debt on them. And just in case someone goes and tries to Google that and search it, I don't know if it's 33 or 36 or 29, but it's a big number.
Oh yeah, because somebody will fact check you on that. No, I'm just kidding.
That's why I said
it. Right. Just so I don't mean exactly 1/3. So how many what would you say the market looks like as far as opportunities for people to actually buy homes like that or invest in homes in that situation? Would you say that many of the homes that are on the market that are actually available for sale are in that situation, or?
Yeah, many of them are. Look, we just bought an office building for our own companies, and we did so in an area that you would say, well, I don't think you're going to find anything like that around here. This is a hot market. It's a tourist market like you're in a resort area. Yet we found it. So there's a whole bunch of those out there, and think about that, the makeup of the person that has no debt on their home. Obviously, if they needed cash, they would have pulled it out of their home. Many people do that. These people, by and large, are savvy, they're well organized, they're financially stable, and they would rather have a larger return the way we buy and wait on their money than trying to sell now and get a lot less net out of it. So it's a very cool market to fish in, and that's not the only market. Because when you say market, Melanie, let me comment on that, the market, right? There is not one real estate market. I know it's going to sound weird to people, but my market might be different than yours, might be different than, 40, 50 of my students around the country. There's no one market. There are pockets that are doing phenomenal. There are pockets that are flat. There are pockets that have already pulled back. They're all different markets, and there's buying opportunities in all those.
Interesting. And so I suppose that geographics has a lot to do with it. I would imagine local public policy would have a lot to do with it. The ratables and all kinds of factors that influence how well the real estate market is doing at that time.
Absolutely.
That would make a lot of sense. I had a real estate investor on a couple of weeks ago who just specifically focused on apartment buildings, and that was really all that was what his kind of niche was, which I thought was interesting. He only did multifamily properties. Do you do any of those? Do you do everything, or do you just do
95% of our homes we buy are singles? We have very targeted campaigns that went out and buy smaller multis. We bought a few in my IRA because you can let that go tax free, obviously. But I love the apartment space. It's not where I focus, and there's one main reason. And I love the apartment people, so this is not any comment against them. I have them on my podcast because I think it's valuable information. But to get into that business, if you're out there listening, it does require that you are going to have to at some point probably get some money from investors if you want to scale that in any way. And if you don't want to scale it, in my opinion, it's just another job. So I always talk in terms of people scaling a business and building it so that they can create a lifestyle. And it's just not something, especially after the 2008 debacle, that I want to go out and do, bang on people's doors for money and go to banks and sign personally. I just don't do it. And that's just my personal style. I want to put my head on the pillow at night knowing that none of that's hanging out there.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes okay. I can understand that. And that is something that he did discuss, that he talked about, is that if you're going to do that, that a lot of times it requires that you develop a team of investors and other members that are going to have some specific roles. Ken McClinton would like you to talk more about the IRA as a part of an investment pool for soft investors. Did you have any comments on that?
I do. It's a really cool question, Ken. So in my opinion, you'd want to use a self-directed IRA and then have that self-directed IRA invest, quote unquote invest. You can do it for $500 in opening up its own LLC. So the LLC is owned by your IRA and its administrator, not you. You can't have anything to do with it, but it's self-directed. So now instead of getting a letter of direction or investment every single time you want to do a deal, the LLC that's owned by our IRA can do as many deals as it wants. And now let's transition that. In our world, if I can put a $500 deposit on a property, owner financing or lease purchase, and in 3 or 4 years cash that out at 40, 60, 150 was our last one, and that all goes back into my IRA, that's a pretty cool way to run your IRA. So if you've got IRA money sitting on the sidelines, you can do that actively. Or we have investors that come to us and say, can we do some deals with you? We have IRA money. And I say, sure. And they'll get anywhere between, a low of 8, maybe a high of 15%. Of course, that varies depending on where it is.
That's excellent. Excellent question, too. Nicely done, Kenneth McClinton. Very nice. Ken's wheels are spinning. He's got some very good ideas going over there. Now, if
that's a cool question.
So if you're brand new to the market and you want to find these homes that are in this situation, like you're interested in just getting your feet wet, how do you approach it? Do you go to a real estate agent? Do you go right to the listings yourself? How do you do that?
Yeah, no need for realtors. We use the listings on the market that did not sell, so that's called an expired listing in the realtor world. So when those expired listings come off, we have virtual assistants who call them, and also the for sale by owners that are on the market, we have virtual assistants that call them. And those are the two types of properties we go after. So you're not hearing me say that I spend $10,000 on mailings and all this stuff is going to cost all kinds of money. I want predictability, and so I have VAs, virtual assistants, calling those two categories.
So those are basically your leads, and the lead lists are made for you, basically.
The list is there, but do I want to talk to them all before I know they'll accept something on terms? No. So I want to make sure my time is spent only talking to people that want to talk to us. So they'll pre-sift them, and if they say, okay, call this person, Melanie, she told me that she's open to hearing about how you can do that on terms, then I call them. That's a productive call. Oh, for sure. And so you have the virtual assistant screen them, and you pay them, I guess, I don't know, $10 an hour or whatever it is you pay your VA, and that saves you a ton of time. Your time wants to be, used making deals, making deals, making the big money. Yep, you said it correct. Yep, which makes a ton of sense. Ken says, what of the LLC procedures for legally creating that without negative impact from the IRS, state oversight agencies? I would think that since you're dealing with an IRA, you're cool, but you go ahead and answer that. Yeah, no, very, very applicable question. So you're going to want to make sure you go to someone that's experienced in doing that. I'll give you the company I use, Melanie, if it's okay to say that on the air. Absolutely. Okay, so I use, in a lot of my students, I wouldn't say all because some of them were set up, we use Quest, Quest IRA, out of Texas. I don't have a contact for you. They were recently merged into a different name, but just go online and check Quest IRA. They are experienced. There's a person that specializes in So don't get the wrong representative. There's a specialist that will help you set up the IRA and then have that IRA direct the investment into an LLC. And certainly I'm happy to help you too.
Excellent. Excellent. I like that. Kenneth said the same thing. Kenneth said the same thing, that's excellent. And that is an excellent idea. I love it. So you use virtual assistants to get the for sale by owner and the expired list. Often when those lists expire, do sometimes those listings go back on another list? Do people, I guess, relist their homes using a different agent or by lowering the price? Go ahead.
Sure, they'll often blame the agent like it's the agent's fault. It's not. It's usually price, and so they'll try another realtor like it's the magic pill. But most of them are frustrated. So if we can chat with them before they go on the market, and they know they're not paying a real estate fee, and they'll get more money net as long as they have time to wait, then they're usually open to that. There's about, I'm going to tell you that 40% of the people we speak with in general are open to hearing more about how we can buy on terms.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense, especially after they've gone through the frustration and the money and having people go through their house. I would imagine they're ready to have like some third party come in and do something else.
Yeah, you just put a huge explanation point on that. Yep, for sure, that's an issue.
Because that's just, I mean, the thought of having to move, just that to me is enough.
Frustrating, yeah.
The whole process is frustrating, let alone having to sell your house. So if you're just starting out, you probably want to focus on a particular strategy if you're new to the game. What do you recommend? How do you recommend you focus if you're brand new to starting out?
When I started doing just terms, now granted, as you said in your introduction, I've been at this now actually 27 years, but when I started doing just terms deals in 2013, I just focused on the lease purchase. Why? Because with the owner financing, if you're saying to an owner, I'm going to buy your house, I'm going to put no money down, you are going to be expected to pay their transfer tax or something at the table. They're not going to pay money to sell you their home. So you will come out of pocket a teeny bit, maybe anywhere from $500 to $2,000. But if you're new, why do that? Go with the lease purchase. Your deposit will be $10, and you can buy that and run that and create immediate cash flow, create monthly cash flow, and then create long-term flow when you sell it. And let me just tell you what that means. We create three, the ones I just said, 3 paydays on every single deal. So a new investor can create those 3 different types of cash flow. And right now around the country, I'll give you the average. The average is about $75,000 per deal over the term of the deal. That's a big number, but that runs anywhere from 1 to 4 years per home. That's a great number per deal when you start adding those deals up.
Sure it is. That's a great number. Wow. Okay. So you would say lease purchases first, get your feet wet, start building up some cash flow to reinvest in the finance, the ones where you'll have to finance, which makes sense.
Yeah, the ones that you put a teeny bit up, but why do that at the beginning?
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. It sounds really simple. I can't believe that it's quite that easy. So would you recommend if you're doing it, let's just say you start doing this part-time on the side, you really like it and you decide, you know what, maybe I can start doing this as a business. How can you parlay that into doing it as a business? Do you have to create your own LLC and start doing it under the umbrella of an LLC? How do you transform yourself from a private investor to a business?
Well, I mean, I personally would suggest that. That's probably a matter of opinion, but I would suggest that they have an LLC with their first deal. It's not required to do a lease purchase, but I would say to do that for a lot of reasons, liability and anonymity.
Right.
A second thing I would say is everybody's palate, Melanie, clearly is different for that transition to full-time. So I have students right now, as we speak, that are saying, okay, I've got this nest egg. It took me 6 to 24 months to build up, but I know now I'm comfortable with making the move for my family. I have others that say, I'm just going for it. I'm burning all the bridges. I'm going for it. So it just depends on their personality, but I tell people to plan somewhere between 6 months and 24 months to really ramp this up so you're doing at least 1 to 2 deals per month and go back to those average per deal. It's a big number. So it's just a matter of what their personal situation is.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. And how do you do I guess you do the deals consistently, especially if you have a virtual assistant or somebody that you're working with who's working those leads for you, then you're talking to people regularly. Is there a certain number of, like in the real estate, or not the real estate business, but the insurance business and businesses like that, there's a recommended amount of people that you should talk to in order to do a certain amount of deals? Like, is there a cycle with this real estate business?
Yeah.
Like there is in similar businesses?
Yeah, everything I do, I try to. I mean, literally, I don't care if I have a hot dog stand. I want predictability. So I can tell you what the numbers are right across the board because we have so many different areas working this. It takes. Remember, we said a virtual assistant's going to generate a lead. I'll call it a property. So it takes you speaking with 17 properties leads to get an appointment to get in the door. It takes you 25 to actually get a home under contract. It's not too shabby. And it takes 35 where you know you're getting a check. So what does that all mean? 35 property information lead sheets from my virtual assistant means I've got a deal worth $75,000.
Okay. And each lead sheet is one property. Is that
correct?
How many properties is on each lead sheet? I haven't seen one in a very long time. So I'm just trying to make sure that that's clear for my audience. So that's not a lot. And how many of those can you do? How many leads can a virtual assistant work in, say, a day or a week? How long does it typically take he or she?
They're going to usually provide you, if they work for you 5 hours a week, they're going to produce on average a couple of lead sheets per hour. So they'll get you on a 5-hour work week for them. They'll produce you 10 property information sheets. So if you do the math I just gave you, you're going to do a deal a month. Now, I tell people that, and they say, well, wait a minute, I've been at this 30 days, I don't have a deal yet. Well, you got to ramp it up. I mean, you got to fill the funnel a little bit. And I tell people, give that, a good 6 months so that we don't have false expectations. There's just so many educators out there, touting get rich quick. I just tell them it's going to take a little bit of time. I don't know everybody yet. Everybody's different, but plan on 6 months.
Right. And then you have to practice your craft, so to speak. I mean, you have to practice closing that deal. You have to practice the right things to say, overcoming objection, and just like any other kind of sales situation. And as time goes on, you get better at that, I would think.
Well, sure. And some students will email us the support, and that's they're going to get email support, and that's okay. So they're going to practice. They're going to do it on their own. Others, the opposite end of the spectrum, have actually us in the trenches with them, almost like quasi-partners, and we're actually calling with them and for them. So does that shorten the learning curve? Sure. So it just depends on how fast or slow they want to go.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Okay. So your core values when you're starting the company and you're bringing on new clients, let's say you're doing well and you need to expand. You're bringing on new clients, you're bringing on new staff. How important is it to establish like some very good core values from the door so that you continue to be successful?
Well, I think it's the entire deal. I mean, I'm out in Arizona speaking with you now, and I come here quarterly for that very reason. We're a family company, and we have 5 or 6 core values and a mission and a purpose. And so what does that mean as far as expanding? If you're going to be an applicant to join our company, or you're going to be an applicant to be a student, people have to apply to be our students because we want them to fit within the value structure so that we have a great experience together. And if it's not going to fit, we just tell them they're not accepted. And I know that sounds strange because most educators, you see the commercials and you see the late night infomercials, they'll take anyone. I want people to have a great experience and to have a great financial and personal experience. So we do it by application.
So what kinds of qualities do you look for in your students?
Well, our values, off the top of my head, we're blunt and to the point. We do everything with integrity. And so when someone comes in, or those two things we look at very clearly. Like if someone came in, I'll give you a facetious but accurate example. If someone came in, they were very, very sensitive to what I would say to them from a coaching standpoint. They don't fit that clear and to the point, no gray area. They're going to be offended by it. So that would not be a fit. And some people just have that personality, and that's okay. It just wouldn't fit our values.
So in other words, they're not coachable.
Well, they might be coachable, but our style of coaching, look, Melanie, we're from New England, right? So we tend to be a little blunt and to the point. I can tell you they'll have success if they can take that kind of coaching.
Ah, yes. I'm from New Jersey, so There you go.
There you go.
So, yeah. Yeah.
You'd be great.
Yeah, and I know I'm not from North Jersey. I'm from South Jersey, but I do have a lot of friends who are from North Jersey, and I have friends who are New Yorkers, and they're a little more to the point. And
I'll leave that one alone.
Well, yeah, and I have a close friend who's from New York, and he reminds me, he's like, "Look, I'm a New Yorker," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's right. My feelings should not have been hurt by that." I forgot who I was talking to. That was not mean. That was just you being from New York. Okay, never mind. Yes, that's true. And so you like to have students who can actually adapt to your style. Now that's really funny in light of the guest that we had the first hour. We were talking about how bosses can adapt to their employees, and what you're saying, and she was a business coach. But what you're saying is that the students that you take on are students who can adapt to the style that your company presents because you know that it's going to be successful.
Yeah. Why not set up where you both know that? Here's what I tell everyone, and this again is not just for real estate. I say if you're going to do anything, any business, find a niche that you like. So in real estate, find a niche. On my podcast, there's all kinds of niches, and not just what I do. So find one you like. And then the secondly is find someone to help you that's still doing deals. Too many people are teaching it and they haven't done a deal in 20 years. Oh. And then third, find out if you're compatible with them. I mean, man, you got to have that. So in our case, it's value connect, but just make sure that you like or can appreciate or can follow their personality style. Okay, that makes a lot of sense for sure. Do you have to do a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Do you have to do a lot of marketing in your case? Like, do you have to, besides calling leads directly, do you do, you don't have to do a whole lot of soliciting or advertising or anything like that? We do not. No, it's a good question because a lot of the people who are in what they call wholesaling or rehabbing, they do teach to do thousands of dollars worth of mailings per month. And so we just don't do it. Your total overhead with a virtual assistant and a phone system and everything you can run is going to cost you, doing one deal a month is going to cost you $500 or $600. That might sound crazy because the return is so high.
That does kind of sound crazy when you think about it. You would think that a virtual assistant is a much cheaper way to spend your money and you have a live person calling people directly. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's predictable.
That's true too. That is true too. You mentioned getting into the trenches with your clients when you do coaching. How does your coaching process work? And when you say in the trenches, what exactly do you mean by that?
Sure. Well, we have everything from consulting where someone can get on the phone with myself or one of our team members once a week, all the way to what we call an associate, where they're all over the country. They're doing not just weekly calls with us, they're doing calls as needed. So if they've got deals going on, some of them we're speaking with daily. Some of them, they'll say, look, I'm new. I didn't know what to say next. Can you call my seller for me? And we do that. And we're literally doing the deal with them as if almost like we were a partner with them.
Oh, wow. That works very well. And do they have to pay any extra for that in the trenches coaching or?
Oh, yeah, it's different levels. And again, it's more how fast or slow do I want to go? What personality am I? And here's what I do, though. I don't want anyone looking at what we do and say, do I have to try it? Like, what if I don't like it? So it's very simple. There's a free webinar if they don't mind listening to me for another hour so they can look at that and say, is this something I really want to do? And I can, even for your audience, if you want, I can, including shipping, I can give you a link to get my Amazon bestseller that you mentioned. And I mean, they don't have to put a card in. It's not pay for shipping. I will pay for the shipping too if they just say they were on your show.
Oh, terrific. I'll make sure that I include that in the podcast when I post it. Where can you're going to provide me with a link for that? Or?
Yep, I'll give it to you. We made it for your show. It's just going to be under free, FREE.
Excellent.
And then the letters SREC, standing for Smart Real Estate Coach. So free, SRECbook.com.
Excellent. And I also have all the links for your coaching and things like that as well, which I'll make sure that I provide in the podcast. Where can people follow you on social media if they'd like to do that?
We are on Facebook. We are on LinkedIn, so they can just put in Smart Real Estate Coach. If they want some more free material, the two great areas to go would be go to our YouTube channel. We release 3 videos per week, and again, for free. Why not? Go check it out and see if it's something you want to pursue. And then, of course, the podcast, smartrealestatecoachpodcast.com.
Excellent. Listen, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. You did an excellent job. A lot of information in a short amount of time. I appreciate it.
I enjoyed it, and I'm super happy you had me on, and great to hear from you. You're from New England. We can chat again maybe.
Yes, indeed. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette. I want to thank everyone for listening to the show. I want to thank my sponsors, Ava Rosenberg, the Tax Mama, Robert Houston, Mr. Credit Repair.biz, John Campbell. Thank you so much for supporting the show. I want to thank you all for listening. If you're listening via iTunes or any other podcast platform, I appreciate your listening. Those of you out there in SHR Media Land, thank you so much for listening to the show. Remember, all of this is very important because after all, it's your money. Have a great weekend.